if there are concerns, let us say, in the United States or even in Europe, they very consciously and deliberately over the last 2 decades allowed their businesses to relocate. That was their choice, it was their strategy. It isn't only about concerns about immigration or mobility. The part which concerns us is to convince them that mobility, the use of talent across boundaries, is to our mutual benefit. That they would be net losers if they actually erect too many roadblocks to the flow of talent.
It was not too long ago that we used to talk about brain drain. Then came around 2000 when the Vajpayee government actually started the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. When actually you began from talking about brain drain, you started celebrating the achievements of the Indian diaspora abroad. But now I see a third phase where your government is actually promoting mobility by doing this migration and mobility agreements. So how has this new phase come? I mean, what is the thinking behind that the government is taking the lead to promote the movement of our talent around the world?
No, you're right. I think we have evolved. I think the brain drain perspective was very much more reflective of a protectionist era, where we saw a zero-sum game between us and the world. That if something went out to the world, it was lost to us. And that has obviously changed because as the diaspora grew and maintained its connect, you realize actually that they were an asset and they were a link rather than a loss. The second phase to me was important because it was actually a strong psychological, emotional message, a realization that actually someone who's mobile, someone who's emigrant, someone who's already emigrated, actually maintains the linkage to India. I think it needed, a very grounded political understanding of Indian society, rather than a very academic, theoretical view of people. To realize that, even if Indians went, even if they went 100 years, 150 years ago, that they still maintained their connections. And I think the Vajpayee government did a great service by creating that, understanding and formalizing it in many ways. And today, last 10, 12 years, I would say, under Prime Minister Modi, we've come out of the protectionist mindset. We are in many ways looking at the world much more confidently, exploring many more opportunities. Secondly, we have further consolidated the link with the diaspora. So we've taken the second phase and built further on it. But more than that, I think there's an appreciation today that, look, the nature of work, the nature of the economy, the comparative advantages we have, I would say even after COVID, the willingness to work, these are all today factors in creating new opportunities. Now, if you stay with that old mindset, and if there are people who do, there's nothing you can do about it. But if you stay with that old mindset, you're actually going to miss out on a lot of possibilities. And, my sense is today, especially the youth of India, because they are so informed, because they are so connected, their imagination is not limited to the national boundaries. They are quite willing to explore opportunities abroad, and I think that's good for us.
There's another change. You talked about how much the government today is willing to spend to deal with the difficulties that Indians face abroad. But there was a time in the protectionist era, shall we say, you went abroad, you were on your own. That it was your fate. That you had to deal with the real world out there. To one where the transition, now you mentioned, the kind of effort that the government puts in, how much of demand you get from the states, for example, from the chief ministers, to do this work a lot more vigorously?
That's also been an evolution. Again, if I were to sum up the changes of the last decade in two parts. One is to create the kind of SOPs, the practices for this to happen. Because it's not that easy. If the Ministry of External Affairs were to ask the Air Force or the Ministry of Defense to send out planes, to send out ships, or to ask airline carriers to dedicate planes, unless they are habituated, unless it has been worked out in advance, it doesn't happen. Unless you have a culture, even within our own system, let us say of, I don't want in a crisis someone saying, where is the authorization to house, 1,000 people who have landed up at my doorstep. So we've actually had to undergo, in many ways, a change in our own attitudes and thinking. That if there is a crisis, if there is a problem, solve it. You have the resources, you have the flexibility, you are empowered to do it. The systems are ready. we've all practiced it a lot. Every time we do an operation, can be big ones. And when I look back, the first one for me, when I came back as Foreign Secretary in 2015 was Yemen. But now I've even forgotten, in the last 12 years, how many of these we've done. We've done Afghanistan, we did Israel, we did Iran, we did Sudan. I'm not talking of first responder disaster. I'm talking of bringing back Indians from conflict situations. And what has happened is we have kind of honed a system where we even have a unit in the ministry. The moment you kind of flick a switch, they know, okay, get moving on this. So that's one I would say, important part of it. The other part of it is, this we do get, it's understandable that chief ministers, state governments write to us. But we also try to make them understand that, look, once you leave the shores of India, for us, you are Indians, so I can understand the pressures and compulsions on a chief minister. So we hear it, we absorb it, but at the end of the day, it just feeds into a national metrics of a plan which we deploy outside.
Minister, what you said about the current policy of migration is very impressive, but there are 3-4 contradictions built into the policy. One, you yourself referred to legal versus illegal. Now, how are you addressing that question in this migration and mobility agreements? 21 you have signed. What has been the experience implementing that this, while you promote legal migration, you also work with the foreign governments to prevent illegal immigration?
Well, I think we can be one part of the change, but our partner government has to be the other part of the change. And one of the reasons why we do these agreements is we try to make them understand, look, unless we cooperate, it's in our interest that mobility is legal. It is therefore a corollary of that, it's in our interest to be against illegal, irregular mobility. But that also requires cooperation. So if you can't say, I'll do one part and not do the other part. Just like we wouldn't say do the legal and by the way, we won't do anything for you on the illegal. But they also cannot expect we'll do everything on the illegal and by the way, stay out of the legal. So this is a compact, it is a working arrangement that we have. The legal and the illegal are two sides of the same coin. We have to cooperate on both. And again, cooperation has many facets here. Often, because one big challenge is always that we have an obligation if there is any of our citizens who's abroad illegally, we have an obligation to take them back. I don't think that's standard international practice. But we have to verify that they are indeed ours. So there are a lot of issues here, sometimes documentation. Now, there are countries which cite privacy. But they can't have it both ways. They can't say it's privacy, we can't tell you, but by the way, he's yours, take him back. So So we need a degree of transparency and understanding here. And that's really what we try to do, which is really, work out understandings with different countries. And my experience with these 21 odd agreements and, has been that wherever actually we have a formal understanding, over a period of time, it has actually been very effective. Yeah. It would not be wise of me to give specifics here, but I know there were governments and often my own